We're into the final in the losers bracket. That means that we're with Farms versus Ajax, both of them rocking UEF on the map, Desert Joust. Now this one in particular is a little bit odd because it has a huge amount, an ungodly amount of reclaim for the size that this map is. All of these rocks are 38 value with 10s and 5s everywhere, 75 sitting up on top of the plateau. You got 2 Salems in the middle to reclaim. You got tank wrecks. You got all kind of crap. And basically, the exercise is, how quickly can you build P-gens to reclaim in order to build more tanks, to get map control, to get more reclaim? You just reclaim yourself into, well, maybe not yourself into oblivion. You try to reclaim the other guy into oblivion. So we're going to figure out which of these two has the better build order, which is able to move forward to the final for that $500 prize. And yeah, I'm interested to see whether it's going to be the cheese or whether it's going to be the steady player Ajax that has been doing so very well this entire tournament. So Ajax going for first land, second and third land with a conglomeration of random power generators after the hydro, and the manual reclaim has already begun. No need for an air factory when you can simply make even more land. Farms is also going for 3 P-gens. I don't know what he's building after that because he hasn't actually queued it, but he is building something or other. He's also got more P-gens in up here. Oh my. Okay, so second land, more P-gens even still, and then third air factory. So he has decided to go for a bit of air. Now, when I first played this map, I ended up running my ACU up to the center to try and gain this reclaim, the Salems up here. And I will grant you, Salems are extremely important. That's 2,000 mass. That is not a tiny amount. However, it is not worth walking your ACU up to the front if you're leaving yourself exposed and not leaving with enough build power already built in your base. So it's more important to have those factories online than to sprint to the front. And that was a critical error that I made on my part because, listen, when you got like 5,000 mass worth of reclaim in your base, it doesn't actually matter to run up and get that 2K reclaim. So hopefully both of these players are going to do reasonably well so we don't get a crush. I'm seeing over in my side chat that apparently Farms has not played this map before and doesn't have a build. So let's hope that he does good things with it. That is going to be an engineer out to the front to grab at least one of the Salems. We've also got tanks and scouts headed out from both edges. Ajax moving up through the reclaim pattern here, building a mechs and heading on his merry way. He's also got quite a few things in the back. That's going to be 3 engineers on power duty, 3 engineers on land factory duty. He is scaling quite quickly indeed, with Farms going for ACU plus 2 NGs, building as many P-gens as he possibly can around 4 factories that are already in production. So we got his 4 up very quickly indeed, but Ajax, if he's not careful, is going to quickly overcome him on that front. Love the little combat in the center there. Engineer is going to finish that off. We've got 2 tanks to protect the NG that is doing the reclaim, and that is going to do quite well indeed, getting Farms a leg up at the beginning of this. That's going to be 4 land factories, 1 air, more P-gens going down, with unfortunately no push with the ACU up to the front. We're working on factory number 6 for Ajax, who is apparently going to go all in on land with not a single air unit to be seen. That will actually work for you if you're aggressive enough. If you sit back at all, if you let things happen to you, that air problem can get away from you. But for now at least, it should work out okay. ACU coming up over the crest there. It would be a shame if something were to happen to that shiny little engineer. But before it does, definitely going to get the rest of this Salem reclaimed. Oh my goodness. The hill is doing such a good job protecting it, and there it goes. And that's got to be disappointing. You just touch it with the ACU. You touch it, and it's gone. So despite not pushing the ACU up, despite everything else going on, Farms has actually gained half of the reclaim out of the center. Good on him. We've also got factory number 6 in production. That's going to be 8, 9, 10 total planned for Ajax with 8 in service. So Farms is definitely behind on his land production, but here comes the hero bomber that will hopefully save us all. That is going to be running in for a pass on the expansion here. Good pull by Ajax, totally evading the napalm. And that bomber is going to move for another pass. Look at the move orders that are queued there. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Oh, it got it. Good job on that. Now into the base it goes because it needs to pick up some more engineers to be worth the effort. Got the ACU headed out to the center to try and claim what Ajax is taking, but Ajax is definitely going to get that in first. Starting to see a lot of units pouring out of this base. That's going to be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Same amount, but much later into service than what we're seeing on the other edge. So Farms is not out of the game by any means, but he is going to have a little bit of an uphill battle going for it. Losing out on the early territory is not actually that big of a deal because, like I said, when you've got this much reclaim at your disposal, the mass extractors at the T1 phase are relatively meaningless. So the goal is to outproduce the other player by enough that you can secure control, and then you will be able to take these mass extractors, upgrade them to tier 2, and sustain through the later game. But the early phase is all about that mass. Farms picking up the last couple of wrecks there, moving over towards the center. And I really wish... I'm kind of confused as to why these guys aren't building more land factories. Even more! Let's take a look at the... stuff here. We're going to go O, which is going to drop us into Ajax's point of view. He's actually doing very well for himself. Perfectly balanced in the middle of the mass bar. 121 power advantage on 540 income, and currently he is sitting on about 50 units. So he's doing quite well for himself, and he does have an air factory up much later in the game, but it didn't hurt him in any substantial fashion, so all good. He is gaining a surplus of mass. 6,000 total reclaims. So 35,540 with 6K in the bank. And then we're going to go over here. So 25,600 behind on mass, ahead on power with 6,600 in the bank as well. Relatively well balanced in the middle of the mass bar. So both of these guys running neck and neck as far as their economies go. I did not check the unit count, but I think that Farms is slightly, and I do mean slightly, ahead. We've got another land factory going down for Ajax, and he does have 2 tier 2 mass extractors, which is where he's getting a lot of that steady income lead. So that is going to be a total of 5, 10, 11 factories versus 4, 8, 9, 10 factories. Hopefully Farms is able to build another one in a minute. Although we do have an additional 2 scheduled for Ajax, who is also going for the gun upgrade. So he is going to try to end this thing at the T1 phase, if it is at all possible. We'll take a look at the reclaim. Both players doing a fairly good job of cleaning out their bases. It looks like Farms is slightly ahead in that regard, but it is hard to tell because they have also started picking up random items around the rest of the map. Over on the left-hand side, we do have nicely clumped units going into combat versus these. Now, this is the bad thing about it. Lobo Fire, although it was fired at the wrong unit, Lobo Fire is going to mess you up if you are clumped up too much. But clumped up tanks versus spread tanks is definitely a winning scenario. I think that this gun upgrade is going to be a slap in the face for Farms. I don't know that he'll be able to save himself from it because he doesn't have a substantial enough unit lead in order to make anything good happen. So it is up to him to gain an advantage in some other way. Now, that other way may be that he engages with his ACU on the back side of the plateau and heavily damages the number of tanks at Ajax's disposal. We've also got 2 tier 2 mass extractors on the right-hand edge. More factories going down for farms. And he doesn't have this gun upgrade. Now he's got a scout over it. He may have this gun upgrade scouted. That is a dangerous, dangerous commander on a map this small. And it looks like Farms is making a beeline for his base with the commander. So I think he definitely has an inkling of what's going on. Left side, total collapse for Ajax. Farms is definitely taking the win over there. But Ajax is already reclaiming on his expansion and has got all 4 mass extractors taken. So this is going to be playing catch up for Farms as he struggles to get enough engineers over here to actually get this base reclaimed. He's also starting the gun upgrade. Oh, that is an interesting choice. Okay, so he's building power generators up on the mesa. You'd have to pathfind all the way around the outside edge in order to kill these, which the other player might not think to do. But once they're scouted, those are going to be really easy to kill. I'm not sure what that's all about. Although it looks like... Oh, those engineers can pathfind down. Okay, okay. Gun upgrade has been delayed. He's moving back, taking his assistants with him. I am very concerned that this is actually the end for Farms. It depends on how aggressive Ajax gets here, because with that quantity of T1 and the amount and the gun upgrade, I don't know that Farms can actually stand up to this. So he's starting the gun upgrade again. He really needs to get these engineers in. They are assisting. Good, 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 good. He needs to get them off the tier 2 mechs and go in for the point defense. Farms is withdrawing on the left, holding his territory. So it's still close enough to 50-50 map control that it's okay. Point defense going down on the left will get obliterated by that gun commander, who is also going to take out the mass extractor on the front edge. Oh dear, oh dear. While we're in a fairly calm spot, I know that this isn't exactly a calm spot. I'm going to take a look at the incomes. So Ajax is currently sitting on 47 income, 840 power, and he's got 80 T1 units at his back. We're going to call it 90, round up. 90 T1 units. And then on the other side, Farms has got 40 T1 units, a T2 unit, and the gun upgrade with 39 income and 720. So he is definitely outmatched in just about every possible parameter. I really don't know if he's going to pull this back. But if he manages to keep Ajax slightly disorganized and is able to get a fair number of pillars out on the field, pillars hold such an advantage over tier 1 that he might be able to pull it off. But there is a thrown down tier 2 HQ. The advantage is not an advantage any longer, and the sheer force of production that Ajax is bringing online. Look at all the land factories. This is just disgusting. So that's going to be 4, 8, 10, 14, 15. 15 land factories versus 4, 8, 10, 11. My goodness. He is going to collapse through the left side, and there is not a damn thing he can do about it. Farms is going to have to loop back over to the left and try to defend the center push with his commander. Meanwhile, Ajax is now moving into the left side expansion to gain reclaim and base. Oh my goodness. This is a real kick in the teeth. Pillar standing strong. Trying to hold up against the T1 onslaught. Of course, with this being pushed back, that will be some reclaim falling into Farm's hands. But I sincerely doubt that it will be enough. We've got 4 T2 mass extractors without a 5th, but the 5th is on the way to upgrade. Farms is taking a phone call. Maybe it is the case. Maybe it is a desperate ploy for some APM. I don't know. A striker versus Calm pummeling the sand. Yes, that is an epic duel indeed. I think that there is a chance that this left side can be recovered. I think that the tier 2 power generator here is going to be fairly bad because 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 of these factories are going to go support T2 upgrade. And that is going to be way more pillars than farms can deal with. I mean, way more pillars. Looks like the ACU is moving forward to the left. Really need to get some of these other things online. He is trying to reclaim himself back into a viable position, but there's just not enough mass that he can get his hands on. Tier 2 upgrade paused on the ACU. I don't think he even has overcharge. No, he does have overcharge. Okay. There is overcharge there, so he should be able to handle himself versus the pillars. But with only 25% map control, actually less than 25% map control, that is just not going to work out. Thankfully, more pillars are on the front line for farms. Good gracious. Pillars trying to micro out, succeeding in pushing back the attack on the other side. But again, it is only a breath of air in a dire situation. And once all those other factories are brought to bear, it is not going to work out. All of these factories now upgraded to tier 2, and every one of them pumping pillars. It's literally 6 times the production of pillars that Farms has online, with far more economy at his disposal and reclaiming his way across the map as we speak. He's already cleaned out the entire left side base and on the right side base, and on the left side he's got his hordes of engineers that are sweeping clean as we speak. I'm going to take a look again just to get the reclaim number on this, because we know that Farms is in a bad situation, but exactly how bad is the reclaim? 16k for Farms, under attack. 23 for Ajax. Good lord, on 89 income versus 37 income. There's simply no way. There is no way outside of like the stinkiest, the slimiest, the most pungent of cheeses that is going to get Farms out of this situation. Oh dear. I mean, I've been surprised by an upset before, let's be real. But I just can't see this going his way. That gun upgrade is making a lot of progress. What's interesting though is that the opposing gun commander is not in the fight. So that's the only reason that what progress has been made. So much reclaim happening over here. We've got three upgrades going for pillar production. But again, there's already like 50 pillars on the field. So I can't see this making a monumental difference. Once again, purging the left side, getting factories down to gain all of this reclaim. Maybe it'll work. Maybe. 3 factories now producing pillars, with 2 more on the way for a total of 5. That is more. Never mind. There's an entire new round of upgrades. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Call it 9 with the amount of assistance that's on that. Still double the pillar production. Holy guacamole. I feel for Farms. I really do in this kind of situation, because it is disheartening to the core to fight a fight like this, to keep grinding out as you know your opponent is getting farther and farther ahead, but still trying, still moving, struggling to gain that upper hand that might just be around the corner, but then again, probably isn't. as we get another 20 pillars moving in from the left-hand side. We've got shield upgrades starting on Ajax's ACU. Once this thing moves into combat, it is going to be a force to be reckoned with. But he may not even need it, as we see even more pillars pincering this ACU. This ACU is now in a very, very bad position. He got a minimal amount of reclaim from this other side and is going to immediately get forced out of it. Artillery stripping down the mass extractors that he's just barely been able to snag a hold of on the outside edges. There is so much reclaim happening over here, but this field is running dry. Now, there is another fight coming where he might be able to generate more reclaim, but it's just a downhill spiral that will never end. Down into the depths of despair. And there's going to be, I think, still 5 factories. 5 factories producing tier 2 versus probably 10 by now on the other side. Why has Ajax not just killed this commander yet? I don't understand. He's moving in now, but even still, he's being soft and careful, slowly grinding away at his opponent, not making any decisive moves. But there it is, the surround of the commander. A veterancy pulling it back from the edge of destruction. GG, a close one, he calls out. Yeah, right. Those overcharges bringing him closer to his 5th veterancy as the pillars get shift G'd around his ACU. Go for, oh, nope, never mind. I was about to say, go for the 6 pillar overcharge. You can do it, but, oh, man, I don't often say this. I really don't. I do not often say that I sympathize with farms. That I can empathize deeply with what he's going through, because he's a troll player in a totally different league than I am. But this looks about like my experience on ladder, where you go into ladder and you just get dishearteningly ground up, and it is a bad experience, let me tell you. But hopefully you come out the other side with a better build order, with a better knowledge of how to deal with this map in particular, and with maps like it, and you just gotta get up and drag your butt forward. And that's really all there is to it. Well played by Ajax. Valiant attempt by Farms. Kudos to him for actually fighting all the way through it, not control Kang out immediately. Though dire the situation might be, there's always that flash of hope, that little tiny glimmer of light that maybe your opponent will misplace a move order and walk into your point defense or some such thing, but alas, no such thing was held by this game. And we are going to head over to the final. Finally, after many grueling hours at sea, we have arrived at the finals. For real though, we're in the finals of the Legend of the Stars tournaments. We have finally whittled down the playing field to 2 players, and oddly enough, it is, as I called earlier, Ajax and Petrick. Petrick is over on the right. He is Seraphim. Ajax is over on the left. He is also Seraphim. The map is Loki, which is a very old and very standard ladder map that everybody should recognize and be able to play. And the battle is a best out of 5 on 5 different maps, going for the prize of $500, which is quite the substantial amount. And before desync, yeah, it would not surprise me, as long as it has taken it as much drama as it has taken to get to the final games. We just can't end it easily, can we? No. That would be far too simple. Ajax is going land factory first, as is traditional, and he is moving way the hell to the wrong direction than people normally do. He's going for 5 power generators, 4 mass extractors with the ACU, and then we'll check in again with him to roll on with his build order and see where he's headed. Petrick on the other side. That is Tamamo. Yes, it is the same as Petrick, just to clear that up. Only Petrick is a member of the Nya clan and incessantly talks about It talks about anime and also has a fluffy-tailed fox avatar. Like that's just the way that it goes. He is going for the more traditional Loki build that I have seen happen a million times before. He is going for a conglomeration of power generators, mass extractors, and factories with the ACU first 2 engineers moving down an attack move order to claim the tree clumps over here on the edge in order to boost up the power supply and get out early air. We've got raiding units headed over to the left-hand side in the form of Selens. Those may just be queued up to be radar, but I would imagine that they will plink away at any engineers that they might so happen to find. And over on the left, we can go back and see what Ajax is actually doing. So Ajax is skipping over entirely all of the reclaim that resides at the bottom of this cliff, which you should be getting on the way over to claiming this factory and whatnot over on this side. I did not actually realize before that that was a functional factory, but it is. Anyway, so that is going to go pick up these mass extractors, then build a land factory over on the other side. You know, I'm going to do it right now because I totally forgot to do it earlier. I do have to give a shout out to Rijik and Navi. Rijik for being a new subscriber and Navi for resubbing for the 2nd month. Thank you to both of you guys. Anywho, back to it. That is just very atypical because you're missing out on a whole bunch of reclaim, even though each one of these things is only 5 mass. Put them all together, it's like 100 and something mass. So this engineer is going out a little later and doing its typical thing, sucking all those up, moving across to get the mass extractors, and then attack moving back through to get all of the reclaim. So this Selen is going to be able to move in on the engineer, might get reclaimed, might not, who knows. But one way or the other, there will be an interaction over there. I think that Selens consume 5 power only when their stealth is turned on, if I'm not totally mistaken. I don't think they consume 5 all the time. I could be wrong on that. You really need to reclaim that before it goes any farther. Oh! Okay, so he put it on hold fire in order to cloak, and then now he's moving away. Nope, now he's over there. Okay. Interesting. Very interesting. Bomber is out for Patrick, so he is going to be using that to exert a little pressure over on this other edge. Engineer is going to go down to the Salem. Oh, no, wait, hold on. Nope, no reclaim. Ah! He almost got it! But unfortunately, it was not meant to be. And there goes the Selen. So, 2 mass extractors were gotten. All is well with the world. We got the reclaim in the back here moving. And there is air out for Ajax. But Ajax, I think, is a little bit behind what the typical build would be. Unless he is striking forward into a new meta that has not even been dreamed of by opposing teams. So he's moving his ACU across to the bottom right, which is a little bit odd. Usually you move to the north with the ACU, but Ajax is doing several things very differently than I've seen people do before on Loki, and I'm not going to disqualify it because he is an excellent player until after I see how the whole thing goes. Engineer down. Definitely need to pick up that bomber with a couple of inties if at all possible. And then the ACU is going to be getting the 3 mass extractors down there. Patrick finishing off a land factory for a little bit of reclaiming action on that side. That is going to be the other engineer dropped as well, with the interceptors finally killing the bomber after gaining control of the air by killing off the opposing interceptors. And then we have this bastard of a tank on the north side who is going to deny any attempt by engineers to claim that in the earliest portion of the game. So how this shakes down is we've got total air win for Ajax. We've got a very unconventional but apparently effective expansion pattern, and Patrick doing the more traditional things in the more traditional way. So we'll just have to see who comes out ahead on this. We've got 4 land factories going down for Patrick, who is also fairly heavily assisting his air factory for a total of 1 3/4 air production instead of only 1. But since Ajax is already ahead in air, we can kind of expect that. And scattered around the map, we've just got little pockets of combat. here and there and everywhere, which is kind of to be expected in a situation such as this, because you've got a fairly large map with lots of avenues of access with only a few units available, since the total number of factories is quite low. Therefore, it comes down to whoever can get the most out of the couple of units that they've got as to who will come out the winner of the early game. So that is going to be Ajax building up. Something that I've noticed about Ajax, he is very lazy with his move orders. And I'm not sure if that's because he has low APM and he knows it, and therefore he decides to spend his APM on more pertinent issues, or whether it's just something, I don't know why the habit is there. But if you'll notice, everybody else, like, you place move orders and then you place build orders, whereas Ajax is just like, yeah, nah, I'm just gonna walk around wherever and just slap down mass extractor build orders with my ACU, where he could have literally done this entire thing without taking a single step, and instead he has walked for every building, literally every building that he's built here, which I'm very confused by, because at 2200 you would expect that people would be more efficient. I don't know. Maybe he's just played a lot of games already today and he's tired of thinking about it, but I think that he's been doing that in most of these games. Okay, so we've got lots of engineers getting some reclaim up there. Transport coming out to get something going on. I don't actually know what. And that looks like ACU moving down in order to grab all of this. We've also got a drop over to the right-hand edge, which is going to take on the 4 mass extractors over to this side. And I am currently running over cord with my chair. There we go. All fixed. Now I'm not restricted in my rolling about, because you know you gotta be able to roll free if you're going to be able to cast effectively. People often ask me what the key is to doing something like this for so long, and the answer is you have to be able to roll your chair around, because if you don't have that freedom of movement, man, you just feel stuck in one spot and it gets old real quick, you know? These 2 land factories ought to be a pretty big help to the ACU, because typically what I find happening is the ACU gets a bit isolated on Loki, and you end up not being able to protect it as effectively as you might be able to on some other maps due to the pathfinding shenanigans required to get any units anywhere. But if you've got a base of production over on the other side of the map, then you can very effectively do a lot of things close to your commander. Bring anti-air in, build power to upgrade, build tanks to back it up, you know, the whole 9 yards. This is concerning to me. Ajax is continuing to place all of these orders, and I think he has completely missed the fact that there has been a drop down here. So I think that Patrick has also completely missed the fact that there is an ACU and a large quantity of units over on this side, which is to his own detriment, although he will have scouted it now. But it's just kind of putting everything in an odd position from the way that things typically go on Loki. Seton, appreciate the resub, dude. Yes, you can definitely have your padded room after 11 months. Alright, so Ajax is going to be able to secure this thing, no contest. That is going to wipe out the whole shebang. And Petrick is now in an odd position because he has lost the northern expansion and the southern expansion. And now there is an ACU that is able to directly counter what his own commander is doing. His solution to this is apparently to drop a full load of 8 T1 units into the base and wipe out the build power, which I must say is a very effective strategy. And if he can cut off this ACU, he may strand it out in an undefensible position. Or indefensible position. Something like that. I don't know. But he's also going to have to expose himself to the rather substantial number of units that are flowing in from the left. Now, this is going to secure the position on the left-hand side for Ajax, furthering his lead that he's already got. I am kind of astounded that this is working as well as it is. To me, it looks like Ajax took a look at what the meta was on Loki and basically did everything exactly opposite in the least optimized fashion possible, and for some reason it's working. Like, part of me genuinely does not understand it. Also, I think that Petrick is just dead. Like, there's enough units here to kill his ACU, and he has no backing units at all. I am extremely confused as to the way this went down. And Ajax is just backing off of it. Look at this. You got 5, 10, 15, 16, 17. Okay. So the ACU would probably survive. But it's still going to be tight, and you're going to get them to critically low HP, and you can bring other units in from the back. I'm just... I have no idea what's going on right now. It's so weird. But the ACU is going to cut off retreat for Petrick's commander, and the amount of units is extremely high in favor of Ajax on the south side. He's actually pincering the ACU into a corner right here. So, I mean, this is cool. He may actually be able to make a move on this. Although to the north side, he has left himself relatively exposed, especially considering the bomber that's in the area that's going to wipe out any build power that he has remaining. So Petrick is going to be able to gain some ground on the north, though losing his expansion on the closer pair of Nexus. But Ajax and Petrick have just engaged with their ACUs in close combat, with Ajax having far more tanks. And he's now binding up Petrick's pathfinding, pounding him as thoroughly as possible, and he's just walking away. I have no words. I have no words. He could have just killed him. Like, why is what's happening? He's just gonna build a point defense over here and go completely passive. He had literally double the amount of T1 units. With his ACU in engagement range, with more HP on his ACU, and he's just letting Petrick walk away. The actual hell. If Ajax loses this, I'm going to be very upset. Alright, so we've got a lot of tanks up in the north. All of this progress that was made by Ajax is now just completely slipping by the wayside. I will point out that he does have significantly more economy established than his opponent does. So we're on all T1 mexes on Petrick's side of the map, whereas we have 4 T2s with a T2 power and a T2 HQ, and a secondary T2 factory under heavy assistance that will be able to pump units out. So as far as that goes, like, he is doing very, very well for himself. He is far and away ahead on eco, on unit count, on everything, despite having lost this expansion up here. So you can't really fault him for that. I'm just, like I said, I'm very confused as to why this is taking place. I just don't know. Ajax building anti-air defense as well to harden this position. And then he's just going to try to force the enemy ACU away. So, oh my goodness. Oh, I thought he bombed his own transport. No, never mind. Okay, that was kind of interesting. ACU is going to get tangled up in the pathfinding. He has another opportunity for a kill here. But unfortunately, with a veterancy on 8,000 HP, I doubt that he'll be able to rack up the damage to actually kill the ACU. So that is probably just going to result in him pulling back into his base. But then again, I could be totally wrong, because that Ilsheva is doing a damn fine job of racking up the damage along with its T1 counterparts. And Petrick completely failing to actually get into the water. Oh my goodness. What is this game even? What? Why? I'm not even going to evaluate this. I'm just going to move on to the next game. I have no words. I have no words. Folks, this is a 2200 versus a 2400 rated player. Granted, we're 5 hours into a tournament, but I I don't understand. I don't understand. We're moving on to the next game. Moving on from that atrocity that was the last game that we're basically just going to ignore ever happened because it didn't happen. We're going to move on to a real game on Setons. This is once again Petric versus Ajax symmetrical Seraphim matchup, and hopefully something that is a bit less memey? I don't know. Fail-ridden than the last one was. Jojo, appreciate the resub, dude. May have gotten a reset, I don't know, but Twitch doesn't actually reset anymore. So let's take a look at Petric and see what he's building. He is going to go for a single solitary land factory with a couple of mass extractors, a couple of P-gens, and then he's going to walk forward, which, as we've seen in a lot of Setons games before in 1 versus 1, it's not actually that beneficial to walk forward super early, because if your opponent is able to slap down enough land factories and bring enough forces with him to the front, then you end up getting completely screwed over, because though you did technically get like 300 extra mass or whatever it was from your reclaim at the center, you don't do well versus all of those units that are following up. So with that being said, Petric is going to finish up, and he is going to book it for the front as his engineers spread out for manual reclaim, hydro, extra factories, mexes, whatever, you know the drill. On the other side, you know what? I'm going to say it. I have said all of this stuff about not doing what these players are doing, but at the same time, we have 2,000 plus rated players that are doing the same build order, which makes me think that maybe there's something I'm missing. But at the same time, looking at their performance in the last game, maybe not. Okay, so we've got plenty of P-gens coming online, lots of land factories queued, with a 3rd air factory, which is a little late, but better late than never. Then we've got, actually, looks like 3rd air on the north side as well. So definitely investing into that early land in order to hopefully get a leg up on the opponent. Nothing queued as of yet to the outside edges for either player. That kind of depends on the person. Sometimes you get an extensive amount of walking from the engineers to go out and secure all of the map, and other times there's transports everywhere and a frenzy of activity that drops engineers across the entire map. It just kind of depends on what's going on. Something of note when you're walking to the front, this is actually a nice little move order here, but I usually try to place here from the north side and here from the south side, because there's actually more continual reclaim of mass through the T3 units than there is in the Salems or other types of wrecks. So it's kind of, no matter what you're reclaiming, I love the Setons battle, the Selen battle, by the way. What you're reclaiming doesn't matter, because your ACU reclaims at a set rate. So the longer your ACU spends reclaiming continually, the more mass you will get out of the center. Therefore, it is actually better to walk less and reclaim more than to go after the big chunks of mass, which then actually puts you in a position where you're away from the majority of the mass. I don't know. Setons is a weird science, and it's been a long time since I played consistently on Setons. That used to be all I played. I think everyone has a phase like that where they go through in their FAF playtime and they're just like, I'm gonna play Setons continually for eternity, and you know, you get like 500 games deep into that and then you regret all of your life choices. But anyway, that is something that you learn about reclaim. So let's skip over all that and talk a little bit about what's going on. We've got Ajax pulling some artillery up to the front, and this is an important component of your daily breakfast or daily Setons, I should say, because Zooies are able to fire very effectively at stationary targets. And fun fact, you have to remain stationary to reclaim. So the more you reclaim, the lower your health bar gets, and the more artillery you can stack up, the less time the enemy ACU can spend reclaiming. And it works out quite well for the person who's dragging all of the T1 artillery to the front. It really, really does. And Ajax is just going to be content to just kind of sit here and wail on Petric for a little while, hopefully force him away at some point in the near future so that he can take all of the lovely mass for himself. Petrick having to micro around a fair bit to avoid that artillery fire. Alternately, if you can't avoid the artillery fire, take it and stand right next to the enemy ACU so that the AoE hits him as well. Or you could just get into firing range and kill all the artillery. That also works. That also works quite well. We do have a bomber out for Petrick. That is going to move around towards the south side, I would imagine. Yes, in order to knock out the expansioneers that are moving out to claim all of this territory. It looks like Ajax has opted for the walkathon as opposed to the, well, nope, there's a transport. Okay, we might see some transport action. Who knows? And on the north side, we've got interceptors being built along with more land factories. That's going to bring his total up to 6 with a 7th plant. Meanwhile, Ajax is still building land factories. That is 5 total completed with 7 planned in the base, totaling out to 12 once it gets everything done, which is just an obscene number of land factories to have in the middle of this map. Ajax and Petrick now looking rather low on HP, with Petrick continuing to suck down mass as quickly as he can. Let's actually take a look at the reclaim numbers just to see how they're doing here. Set focus army 2-0, which should give us Ajax. Ajax is rocking 5,000-ish reclaims, slowly ticking up at 31 and 580 income. And then if we set this over to 1, 5K 31,580 versus 4K 41,440. So mass is higher, power's lower, and reclaim is lower for Petrick, mostly because he's had to spend a bit of extra time walking due to that artillery. So there, folks, is exactly what you want to be watching for when you're playing the front on Seton. You gotta get your stuff optimized for getting as much mass as possible out of the middle for the least amount of effort. Bomber is going to kill off the expansioneer on this side, but is going to instantly get shot down, and we also have the recovery mechanism already in place because 2 engineers are going to get dropped over on the rear expansion and then 2 more to the right in order to lock these down as quickly as possible. Petrick is flying with some engineers over to the far side of the map, and honestly, I would not be surprised if he drops either right here or right here, because you can get 2 to 3 land factories built on that side, and about 4 without getting a tree reclaim. On the other side, it looks like he is opting for this zone, and that is a fantastic place to start an incursion onto the enemy's territory. Ajax sitting at about 6,000 HP versus 3K. Those artillery hits are bad news. This is why you often see people die even after they submerge. You have to walk in a zigzag fashion in order to avoid all of that artillery fire. However, Ajax doesn't have enough units to back himself up on the front, so he's going to have to sacrifice more of his ACU HP in order to hold this if he wishes to hold it at all, and he is going to struggle a bit as the rest of his production comes online. However, once he gets that production up, it is going to be a bad time for Petrick, because that is a lot of force of production. It looks like we got 3 land factories with a radar going down, and Ajax has absolutely no idea that this exists. We've also got another engineer dropped, oddly enough. Why on earth? Maybe just to build mass extractors? I don't know. Maybe he just wants the foothold. Who can really tell? And then the transport moving up to grab the island, which of course is what you always want to have happening. So Tamamo is going to move up just a tad, securing this zone with all of its lovely reclaim for his own devices and forcing his opponent back. Of course, the land factories are replicating at extreme speeds in the north. And we've also got transports delegating engineers to tasks all around these expansions. Tamamo doing a fantastic job of locking down his side of the map. And on the other side, Ajax is just struggling to get the number of mass extractors that he needs. And in addition to that, he's now got a tank to contend with. This tank is going to be able to kill the T1 engineer. Oh, winging the shot around the factory before it comes online. That is going to be a radar in effect, and interceptors are coming over to check it. Looks like we've got a gun upgrade started for Petrick. That's going to help him hold the middle in an even stronger fashion as he starts to wipe out the expansions that Ajax has worked so hard to get on the back end. Now, this is an interesting response. Ajax exploiting the strength of the Seraphim transport system, that 8-unit drop, to go directly after the build power. Now, anti-air defense coming online, a little too late to actually get anything done here. That is going to fall down and immediately wipe out the build power, followed by a death blow to the factories. So very nicely countered from him, shutting that thing down as quickly as he possibly can. Shouldn't have any issues whatsoever. The problem is he doesn't have all of the engineers. So if Petrick were to go after more factories over on that corner, he still could feasibly do more damage. But as things are, he's got 4 tanks out and about that are going to be able to move through the expansions, killing off mass extractors, and that is going to cause all kinds of heartache for Ajax's plans. Ajax is ahead, though, in score. I find that very weird. But he is going to move over to the other side with a combat drop. No engineers this time around. So that's going to wipe out the rock expansion. And Petrick is very close indeed to locking down his entire side of the map. Looks like we've got a roughly even land setup in the middle. I was fully expecting Ajax to drastically outproduce Petrick. But as it turns out, Petrick was able to get enough factories down to deny that early push. And then, though Ajax has more production by sheer weight, the amount of units that you have clumped up on the front at any given time is consistently pretty important. Maybe even more so than the, anyway. The gun commander is also going to make a huge difference. What I was trying to say is 15 factories producing a stream of units into 10 factories maintaining a clump at the front. The clump is going to win out every time because you can kill the unit so much more quickly. Brick's brain, it is a fryin'. But this ACU from Petrick moving up through the middle is going to force back all those artillery. And I like how Petrick is using a much more mixed force as opposing to go for strictly T1 artillery, because those T1 artillery, though very powerful when you're crashing through a base and extremely strong in large numbers that we've seen a multitude of times before, when you're in a straight land-on-land combat situation, tanks tend to do a lot better than artillery does because they're direct fire as opposed to delayed fire and indirect fire, and they more consistently do damage to the main units. Also, tanks are faster than artillery, so closing distance is pretty easy when that is the case. Now, Petrick, I really hope doesn't get too far overextended here because he's about to have a tier 2 ACU in his back, and that is about double the amount of T1 units that he has at his disposal, along with about 20% superior production, which makes me think that that is going to be a bad time. We've also got Ajax succeeding in his raid on the rock base, and he is going to move his units through in a similar fashion to what Petrick was doing on his side over here. We've also got a combat drop headed for the island, though I think that with the amount of artillery that's available over on this side, that is going to be easily obliterated. That is not a combat drop, that is engineers, so he doesn't know that Petrick already has that island. That's going to be a total wipe. If Petrick does not back his ACU up, he will die, because that is too much for his ACU to handle. I guarantee you. He is going to back off, but I think he may have overstepped here. There is simply so much tier 1 there. That is going to be very difficult to get a grip on. Artillery killing off the transport before it can even drop the engineers. Oh my goodness. Wow. And then the tier 2 ACU popping out into Petrick's back. This may be another win for Ajax. Oh dear. Oh dear. 2,000 HP, walking straight under artillery fire. 1,000. Oh, the artillery fire continues to rain down on the commander as it turns around the corner. He may be able to get out of it, and he is, but he's going to take even more hits from the arty. Ajax with that tier 2 ACU is in full position to go for torpedo spam. He needs to do something here so that he doesn't let Petrick escape and resituate himself, because there's now multiple tier 2 factories on the top that are going to be pumping Ilshivas, which will be able to easily wreck the face of any of the T1 units that are moving in that direction. Taking a look at the new combat drops, we've got a little bit over here. We've got some over on the left where Ajax is wiping out single T1 mass extractors around the edges. Very nicely done on that. He is succeeding in damping Petrick's attempts to gain a distinct foothold. Ajax is actually back in the green HP. My goodness. All he needs is a tier 2 air factory with a handful of torpedo bombers, and that ACU is as good as dead. One torpedo bomber would be adequate. He doesn't want to stop walking because that ACU walking is a bit difficult to deal with T1 torpedo launchers. But if this ACU comes out of the water, it is definitely dead. The devilish side of me says that Ajax, dude, just control K. You could have killed him. He was under 2,500 HP. Ajax with another combat drop going in for the heart of the rock base. This is just overwhelming play. Ajax now far ahead on his economy and just bringing this huge weight of units to bear. The Ilshivas are going to stabilize the front, so Petrick is not actually dead yet. However, it is not looking super great for him. Looks like we've got Petrick able to shoot down that drop, but Ajax is far and away in the lead on air. And there's the T2 HQ on the air factory, and that torpedo bomber is going to be headed straight in for this ACU. I guarantee you this is the death, because even though he's regained up to 3,200 HP, he simply cannot survive. Torpedo launcher being built. Vet is what he's saying. I wish that were the case, but unfortunately he just doesn't have it in him, I don't think. 2 torpedo bombers coming in from opposing angles. That's going to be about 1,200 damage on that ACU, down to 24. Ajax following up. He's trying to make it so that the ACU can neither be in the water nor on the land. Another pass with the torpedo bomber, dropping him down to 2,000 HP. He now has to leave the water, so it's guaranteed to be at minimum a tie. There is a mobile flak in position, but there are more torp bombers coming in for the pass. Torpedoes dropped. Too shallow of a water. 800 HP on the ACU. I cannot believe that Petrick is still alive on this. We've got a T2 gunship that's out. 1,000 HP, and he's got mobile flak to back him up. Torpedo bomber coming in again. Can he get the torps in? No, it's too shallow. This is one of the critical weaknesses of the Seraphim torpedo bombers. The gunship is available, but again, the mobile flak is there. How in the hell is Petrick still alive? Wow. Gunships coming in for the attempt, but I just don't think that 2 gunships is going to do it, especially considering that there's flak out. 3,000 HP on that ACU thanks to veterancy. Good gracious alive. Why on earth is that ACU still there? Got a drop there, which is on radar. Got a drop over here, which has been defeated. Ajax is now in the upper hand position due to consistent rating on this other side. We'll take a look at the ecos in just a second, but holy crap. Okay, tier 2 point defense getting dropped in a good position to overlook the neck, and now Petrick is finally safe and stabilized. Freaking A. Alright, Petrick. 160 mass per tick on 1700 power with a heavy power stall incoming. And then that is going to be 155 mass per tick, 3100 power for Ajax, not stalled. So he's slightly behind in mass income, but far ahead in power, 18k reclaim versus 12k reclaim. So definitely a powerhouse of industry on Ajax's side, but it remains to be seen as to whether or not he can stop these drops, because we've got tier 2 transports loaded to the gills with artillery and tanks that are headed over to his side of the map. And honestly, at this point, I would not be surprised, if tier 2 flak and or Ilshivas were included in these drops to make them even more devastating. There is an Ilshiva there, but no anti-air, so we'll have to see how long that survives, knowing that the opposing forces do have gunships at their disposal, down here actually. So those do need to move in order to do anything good. We've got 2 Ilshivas on the Seraphim T1 transport over here. Again, the prowess in the Seraphim transports is impressive because they are able to carry so many more tier 2 and 2 more tier 1 than any of the other factions can. I think it is 2 T2 on the tier 1s of most of the other factions. It might be 1 on some of them. I think it's 2. And the Seraphim can carry 4 because of the hook count. It is kind of crazy. Alright. So the Ilshiva drop is going to be somewhat successful in that it's taken out a few mass extractors, but honestly, there's so many tier 2 mass extractors on the bottom half of the map that the top half really doesn't matter at this point. And it looks like both players are going to be running for Navy in opposite oceans. Petrick is making a stab at some T1 Navy on the north, but I don't know that he's going to be able to do anything against 6 naval factories all pumping frigates. That is just far too much for him to contend with. The ACU is, I would say, out of the danger zone on HP. He's also got T1 anti-air, he's got a shield, he's got PD. All of this stuff looks very good, but here comes the Nano Regen Tier 2 Gun Commander for Seraphim. One little T2 point defense is not going to be a bother for that ACU to shrug off, I gotta say. Tier 1 bombers taking care of some of the opposing units that are dropped. Of course, Petrick also taking a pretty severe blow to his tier 1 mechs count over on the right-hand edge. But again, so many tier 2 mass extractors on the field that it doesn't really even matter if a single T1 goes by the wayside. I don't think that it does. Tier 2 gunships moving in for the last of the land units as, oh my goodness, those things are going to survive on 18 HP and or 14 and 30 HP to kill that artillery. That is completely absurd. ACU shrugging off the damage, still moving in on this position. Tamamo does have gun and tier 2, but that lack of regen is a big deal since this ACU can soak damage for an extended period of time, step out of the fight for a few moments, and then come back fully rejuvenated. But in the meantime, it is going to be enough, at least, to hold this front edge. That is going to be a tier 2 point defense that needs to go down, but the power stall is real. And even though that shield should be doing much, much more, it is simply not able to hold back this tide of units. The Seraphim shields are completely insane as far as their protective capabilities. But power stall is the great equalizer. We've got tier 1 transport hauling. Is that an Otham? Oh my goodness. That is a tier 3 land factory. Petrick is running tier 3 land, dropping in multiple locations. A Zooey and a tier 3 tank on that side. We've got multiple tier 1 artillery on the left. And then, no! That was a transport shot down with Othams in it. Let's check on the other side. Yes, tier 3 land there as well. I saw someone tag in the chat that Ajax had apparently lost 4 Othams in a transport. I was trying to find the wreck, but I completely missed that. Both players are at T3 and are dropping T3 shenanigans around. Ajax may be spending a little too much time standing close. Might need to step away because that is an 8k HP commander in the face of 3 Seraphim point defense. That is a lot of damage. You need to get away from that. Otham moving in from Petrick again. This one is going to make landfall. And now the hurt will be real on these units. Hopefully there's gunships at Ajax's disposal to try to mitigate some of this. But I think that Petrick is setting up to take a pretty good stance back on the map. Let's go ahead and pull up the economies of these two players while we have a moment. That is going to be Ajax at 155 and 3100. Hold on. There we go. And then, 200 income in 33. So Petrick has most definitely surpassed his opponent's income by a very wide margin. T2 transports all over the place trying to drop. Zlo calling out another one with 4 Othams that I probably completely missed while I was in the menu. This transport is going to get shot down by all of these interceptors chasing. I think that, yeah, that was 4 Othams there. They managed to kill a T2 power generator, but were obliterated by the forces that were in the base. So, not exactly a successful bout, but, yeah, T2 PGen is better than nothing, I suppose. Whew! Petrick is running T2 air in the main base, T3 land in the main base, and struggling to get enough power to actually run everything he's asking. We've got multiple T3 support factories that are ready to pump Othams. I think that the main issue here is definitely power, because that is a struggling shield right there if ever I have seen one. We've got another full transport. That is 3 Othams, 3 T1 units. It's going to drop right into the center of the action here. And then on the outside, we've got more consistent drops. Just too much for Ajax to keep a handle on. His air is misplaced. He's not able to bring his proper units to bear. This is just a bad spot to be in as his hopes start crumbling down around him just from the quantity of drops that are getting through. This is going to be a strike at the core base. 3 T2 mass extractors that are going to go down on his already struggling economy as Petrick continues to scale up all the mass extractors that he has on at his disposal. Ajax exhibiting the strength of that nano regen ACU, once again back at full HP near about. Looks like if Ajax is able to engage air effectively, he does have more air. He's simply not able to get the air fight that he needs to secure that control. But here it is, he's closing in. And that is going to be GG on the air. Petrick completely removed from the skies other than a couple of out-of-fuel interceptors. And now it looks like Ajax is going to make a push on the main base at the front of a force with 6 T3 tanks and a whole lot of Ilshavas. So as long as he's able to soak some with his ACU, which I kind of think that he was too far to the front with his commander, as long as he's able to soak that damage with his ACU, he is going to be able to close into range with the tier 3 and absolutely desecrate his opponent's homeland. 4,000 HP on the ACU. There's the last veterancy for 10k HP. 2 tanks going down to the overcharge as that T3 rams into the base. Petrick falling back. He does have his own contingent of 5 tanks in the rear, but he doesn't have the HP total that Ajax does on his commander. This is probably going to be the focus fire here for an attempt at the win. T2 power generator goes down. Loads of damage racked on that ACU thanks to the tier 1 artillery as the commander climbs back out of the water to engage. You gotta get all the damage you possibly can down on this ACU while you're able. The center base has been removed, 1,000 power off of the already struggling grid that Petrick is desperately trying to keep alive. We've got drops on the other edges, but the tier 2 gunships are being pulled to try and strike this ACU down in a decisive manner. The air is won. There's no flak in the mix, and Nothas are now circling on the ACU. Of course, Nothas not able to really do much damage versus a Seraphim commander with that much regen and the dodging capabilities. The engagement, though, is going to cost Ajax a fair amount of HP. He's now in an exposed position that he may not be able to pull back from in a safe manner. Lots of bombers, lots of Authams at the ready, and here come the gunships. I think that might be GG. It depends on whether or not Petrick can get to the safety of his shielding. Lots of tier 1 bombers and Nothas still delivering hefty blows to that ACU as the gunships come in on the commander. We're going to get a health total in the corner of the screen so we can follow it. 10k HP down to 9-8. Trying to get anti-air online. Mobile flak pouring out of the base as he sees what is happening. 4,000 HP, 3,000, 2. The gunships are getting knocked out of the air by the flak. Below 1,000 HP as he tries to get into the shield. 700 HP, and he's inside the bubble. Oh my goodness, Ajax bailing. The GG thrown out. He overextended on that, sacrificed too much, and that was the freaking GG. My goodness. Twice, Petrick gets out sub 1k HP to pull back the win on that. Literally one gunship was the difference between life and death on that. My goodness. Well played. Well played indeed to both of these guys. Petrick taking the win in a decided fashion later in the game through economic force. Ajax struggled to pull together what units he could in an attempt at a strike, but unfortunately, it was just not stinky enough cheese. And Petrick takes out the win. Number 3 in this best out of 5 is going to be taking place on the Fancy Lands. And you might be asking yourself, what's the difference between the Fancy Lands and the Badlands? Well, the Fancy Lands, they're fancier. You got a little bit cleaner lines on some of your stuff. You got some prettier terrain. It isn't quite such a ghastly hue of red over the entire map. It's just kind of, you know, the cleaned up, slightly better version of the Badlands. So, again, it is Tamamo versus Ajax. Looks like everybody's playing Seraphim today, and I don't know why. Symmetrical Seraphim once again. And Badlands, or I guess Fancy Lands, as I should be calling it. Fancy Lands is one of those maps that tends to lend itself towards the T3 phase. You have 3 avenues of access to your opponent's base. This lends itself to fairly stagnant gameplay late in the game. Early on, we'll probably get a lot of raiding action because you do tend to have more protection on one side than you do on the other, so roundabout raids and that kind of thing happen fairly often. But typically, the way this game goes is you have a tier 1 phase, you have basically a non-existent tier 2 phase, you roll out tier 3 units, and the game is decided by whoever can mass up more T3 units, get at the reclaim, and crush the other person. So I do anticipate this being a slightly stagnant game, but occasionally people pull out some nonsense and surprise the crap out of you on a map such as this. So let's go ahead and break down the build orders. We've got Ajax going Land Factory, 4 mexes with 2 power generators immediately after the factory. That is going to roll into him walking to the Hydro. You don't want to do 4 mexes Hydro because it's too far to walk. You don't have enough power for that. to float, so you got to get the 2 P-gens in there. That is going to roll him into a second air factory and then multiple additional land factories. Typically, the meta is to move your ACU to the opposing edge, so blue goes to the left, orange goes to the right, and that gives you a good point of both build power and combat potential to defend your exposed expansions. We've also got a cell in here in the middle that is using that 5 power. Okay, thank you, Mr. Camera. Using that 5 power to remain concealed and provide some consistent radar coverage out here in the center. It'd be really funny. It's happening. There's going to be Cellin buddies in the middle. They're going to have no idea. Absolutely no idea that they exist next to each other, but they're going to be practically hugging and providing radar from identical portions of the map. There they are. They make a cute couple. They really do. All right, so taking a look at Tamamo's side, Petrick has also gone for Land Factory, 2 P-gens, 4 mechs is pushing over to the Hydro, second air, fewer P-gens, though, because he is going to push over to the Hydro, and then he's got another Land Factory online there. So, again, as I've said a million times before, and I will say it again, if you see 2 2K rated players doing the exact same thing in a match, you should probably incorporate it into your build order, because it is probably a good idea. So, as these ACUs split out, let's talk a little bit about exactly what goes down here. We have a lot of reclaim in the center craters, so this is going to be what you boost your early game production with. Then you've got center mass, which is not super critical. Like, it's always important to get mass, but this is not a big enough portion of mass compared to the mass on the rest of the map that you should be dying over it, I guess, is the direction I'm headed with that. So definitely get up there with engineers to reclaim it when you're able to hold it with your forces, but don't, like, sacrifice your ACU on the altar of vain reclaim. And then you've got 4 bases with 4 mass extractors in each, with expansions of 2 for 6. And then if you total out all of the mass extractors on each side, then you end up with 8 plus the 2 in the expansions here. So there's a hell of a lot of mass extractors. That's basically what I'm driving at. And usually this map tends to, once you can get these sides secured, you end up just sitting back and teching your mass extractors, and there's not much else that happens for the next 15 minutes or so. On the left side, we do have a successful raid that is going to be able to knock out the expansion here before it completes its duty of building the mass extractors. Then we're also going to snag this one. So fairly significant slowdown of the expansion pattern, and then also a successful raid on the right. So Petrick is coming out very strong out of the gate. We've only got 1 counter raid coming in from Ajax, which is going to get in too late to deny the actual mass extractor build, and may be denied entirely, because we do have, there we go, several tanks that are moving in to push that away. So Petrick has been able to successfully kill off several expansioneers and delay the building of these mass extractors, where Ajax has not gotten a single freaking thing done in this entire early phase. So points to Petrick for holding up the beginning. However, Ajax does have a strong enough build to keep him ahead in score, so do not discount that. More P-gens being built. I was kind of zooming in to see what exactly the terrain was like here, because I didn't think that you could actually build anything over the top of that, but I suppose a building as small as a power generator probably isn't going to cause much of a kerfuffle terraforming-wise. And then on the top edge, let's see, we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 land factories planned, which is not that much, considering how many mexes are on the map. And then it looks like we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 on the other side, with 10 in the expansion, though I would assume, yes, there is an equal expansion factory over here for Ajax, strictly to get the engineers out. So now it's basically just keeping track of all of these little pokes to see if anything is successful. The anti-air tanks that are doing their jobs, hitting the interceptors until they fly away. A little bit of an intercept here. Very nice pickup from Petrick. Exactly what he needed to do. And ACU moving away, trying to cut off the escape route of these 2 tanks from Tamamo, but I don't think that those are going to be caught. No, the ACU is not going to be able to get in range. So that is an effective and successful run by. I still hear lots of shooting, probably because this little guy is shooting into the wall of this. Oh dear. Oh dear. Well, they're going to move past and kill the engineer regardless, but it would have been epic if that guy was able to survive and actually build it up. Ajax is going to go after the plateaus. It's going to be a landed group of engineers there to snag the reclaim, snag the mass extractors. And then if you think about it, so land factories typically consume about 4 mass per tick, actually literally 4 mass per tick in this particular case. So when you think about your economic potential, it's 2 mass extractors per land factory to run it. Sorry, was drawing a mental blank there. So if you count up the amount of mass extractors that you have and divide by 2, that's how many. I am pressing all of the wrong keys. Set focus army to 1. That's how many factories you can run. So if we click in, he hasn't got any tier 2 mass extractors yet, so we're just going to go on the T1 count, and that is 31. So he can run 15 and a half or 16 land factories without any reclaim. But then you always figure in reclaim, you overbuild by at least 10% build power on your income so that you're able to spend mass. So if you overbuild by 10%, that would be about 18 land factories. But with the amount of mass available, I would go for closer to 20 if I were doing strict T1 spam. However, this map techs up very quickly. So if you overinvest into T1 and your opponent is getting tier 2 mass extractors because of the choke pointed orientation of the map, you're probably not going to be able to fully exploit that. So I would be a little bit more conservative on that, get a couple of mass extractor upgrades, and then go for tier 2. But it's just a way to think about it. If you are ever wondering how many land factories to build, and you have no idea, figure it out that way. So Petrick is sitting on 71 mass per tick with 880 power on 4,000 reclaim. So 4K 73,880 versus 3K 60,700. Petrick is actually ahead in every single metric of economy. So that is definitely going to be a bit of trouble for Ajax moving forward in this game, especially considering the fact that Petrick also has significantly more land factories than he does. Up in the north, this drop is a fantastic move because it's going to enable the killing of some engineers. It would have been better if these had been rebuilt mexes, but unfortunately, there's not anything in the immediate vicinity to kill right off. But it will redirect some units, it will slow his opponent down, and it gives Ajax one more thing to think about. And often, in a game, the mental impact of units is more consequential than the physical impact when you're talking about 4 or 5 units at a time. Because delegating units, using your APM to structure things correctly, all of that kind of stuff takes a mental toll on your opponent and can put you in the lead in an indirect fashion. Let's check for T2 HQs, and there is one on Petrick's side, rolling out the first couple of Tier 2 engineers, which I'm sure will be going after Tier 2 power generator and then a TAC launch, or TAC missile defense. On the north side, we do have an HQ, and that is also going for Tier 2 power, rolling into multiple air factories, even though Ajax already has air control. So we're probably going to see a significant amount of airplay coming in. Tier 1 point defense, gonna tag in some damage as these units pass by, doing a very bad job of hitting that artillery that's skirting the hill. I'm not sure why the accuracy was so low on that, but that is going to guarantee at least a little bit of damage to Petrick's rear base, and he will have to pull some units from the front line to deal with the run-by. So definitely something good on Ajax's part to take care of. And for anyone who is wondering why these things pop up, I have realized as I've gone back and viewed, I tried to do it less often, but I habitually click the shift key, because when this flashes up, if I hold it down, what I'm actually looking at is all of the move orders that are placed around, and I'm taking a look at the lay of the battlefield, because you can see here when there's more blue headed to the center, that means that my focus needs to be directed to the middle of the map. And if I am in other areas, you can see kind of how things scatter. So this is a good habit to pick up for your own units as well, because if you are taking in a big picture view of the battlefield, you'll forget where all of your individual move orders are placed. And if you just zoom out, click this enough to get a glance at it, or like sometimes I catch myself hitting it twice, you're able to much more easily get a grip on the overall flow of the battlefield. All right, looking at the center here, we've got Ilshivas engaging with tier 1 units mixed with Ilshivas. The number of tier 1 units on the field is going to quickly drop, as you'll see, because producing tier 1 once you move into tier 2 is a waste of mass. Ilshivas wipe it out, mass for mass, no contest. So you're going to see a few Ilshivas mixed in, or a few artillery, rather, Zoos mixed in with an overwhelming quantity of Ilshivas as this shift takes place. We've already got T2 shift happening. That is multiple tier 2 support factories. Still some Ilshivas and Thams being produced on the other edges, but we're probably going to see some support factories on both sides of the map pop up. Ajax not doing things as conventionally as sometimes I would assume they would be done. And Petrick is rolling 4 T2 factories, one of them heavily assisted. A lot of times you'll actually see people reclaim their T1s as they're building a few tier 2s, because of course the tier 2s consume more mass, more than double the mass that the tier 1 factories do, so you don't need as many to spend the same amount of mass, and you can reclaim that and put it into more T2 mass extractors or some such thing. So always good to keep that in mind as the battle is rolling forward. I've had people asking me recently, and I am doing a bit more rambling this game because it does get a little more stagnant, so trying to keep people informed about a few things. I had someone asking me recently why I tended to Control K and reclaim some buildings. And the reason is that often as you move up through the tiers, there are certain things that are more efficient at higher tiers, so you don't need the lower tier buildings anymore. And there's also certain things that you simply don't need. So when you're moving to tier 2 power, sometimes in 1v1 situations you won't see it happening as often, because if you get a single power generator sniped, you don't want your tier 2 power to be what you're depending on entirely. But as you're building tier 2 power, reclaim your tier 1, because tier 1 is not as mass efficient per power generated as tier 2 is. So you can pay for your tier 2 power generators with the reclaim on T1 power generators, or after your T2 is up, pay for tier 2 mass extractors with the reclaim from your tier 1 power generators, and come out as a net positive. Same thing for not being able to run as many tier 2 factories as you can tier 1. Instead of just letting those sit idle or wasting by building tier 1 units when you don't need tier 1 units, reclaim the factories. Put that mass into something you need, because well invested 81% of the mass is better than 100% of the mass sitting there useless. Ilshiva numbers are building in the middle, and this is genuinely concerning because there is an ACU there. He did get the gun upgrade done, and that is going to lend itself towards some excellent overcharges in the center. This entire center pass can be locked down by a single gun comm if you're doing it correctly. Very formidable force on the battlefield, as always, but particularly so in choke points. But this is actually enough to kill this ACU, even though it is tier 2 and gun. So I'm glad that Petrick has a good quantity of units over to the side. I would just love to see him building a power storage. He finally built one there and is building a second so that he can move in. I'm not actually sure. I think that Ilshivas may be able to survive a single storage overcharge now. Because as we all know, and it's been a while since the balance patch came through, but it's good to mention occasionally for the newer players that are in, energy storage has been scaled, so you do damage proportional to the energy in your storage. So you can overcharge just about any tier 2 unit with a single overcharge from a 9,000 bank. But if you're only at 5,000, you can't kill some tier 2 units with a single overcharge. And then the more power you stack up, the more damage you deal, up to 15,000 on mobile units. So as long as you have like 8 power storages and it's completely full, you can do 15k damage to a single target with overcharge. But it scales with the amount of power you have, so always remember that. Tamamo is going to drop a point defense up on the front line to slowly eat through some of these units on the other edge. And well, never mind. That mass extractor is not going to be able to be built because there are opposing point defense that are guarding this forward edge. So that is going to turn this into a bit more of a choke situation. I think that the nano repair is an excellent idea on Petrik's ACU because he'll be able to soak that damage with his commander and move in on this base post-haste. We've got tier 2 scaling still, I think. That's 2 more factories on Ajix's side, and then if we move over to the south, we've still got 4 and then a very heavily assisted 5th land factory. So I would assume that that is going to continue to increase, but for the most part, it looks like these guys are slowly going through their T2 mass extractor upgrades while gradually scaling their production. Much more slowly than I often see on this map. Ajix has got Nano Gun NT2, a formidable fighting force to be sure, but the equivalent ACU is moving up to the front from Petrik, 15k versus 15k HP, so that they're equivalent vet ranges. And yeah, now it's just going to be the battle of the ACUs. Once this engagement happens, it's going to be interesting to see exactly how this falls out, because once these lock, whoever flinches first will generally cede map control and the reclaim to their opponent, which can be game deciding. So it's very important, as you can see there, Petrik actually let his opponent walk in, taking a horrendous amount of fire so that his HP was lowered, and now he's pushing forward. This might actually be the end. No, he's redirected. Okay. So he is going to focus more on the units on the outside edge, catching up with the ACU. This is going to lead to veterancy on the commander. I don't know that this will be an actual kill, but that was a brilliant bit of micro on Petrik's part. Ajix is going to dive once again. I think he may be attempting a draw here, but that may have also been a misclick. A shift drag all units to the front order here would have resulted in that. 2,700 HP on the ACU with 1 veterancy under the belt. We got to get a second, and it is almost there. 1 more T2 unit overcharge. He needs it. He needs it now. 1,300 HP. Come on, get the vet. There it is. 3,500 with Tamamo almost at full HP. But I don't think that Ajix is going to get as lucky as his opponent did with those brutal denials of the lethal damage. 3, 2, 1, and the GG is thrown out. Ajix taking the win in the T2 phase, denying the normal flow of the Fancy Lands. So what's interesting about this matchup is that was entirely decided by ACU Micro. I'm not sure whether or not Ajix knew that Tamamo had a nano ACU. If he did, I think he would have been more careful there. But what Tamamo did was he sacrificed units on the front, held his ACU to the back in order to lure Ajix to the front. Ajix pushed into the base thinking that he could crack the base and shed over half of his ACU's HP to do so. And then Petrik pounced with a full HP ACU and an equal number of T2 and T1 units. It was brilliantly executed. Ajix walked right into it, no fault of his own. It was a good maneuver, and Petrik just slammed that thing home. Very, very well played on both parts, but Tamamo is going to take his second win in this best out of 5. This could potentially be the last matchup in this best out of 5. If Petrik wins it, he is the final winner. If Ajix wins, we get one more game after this. The matchup is going to be on Bermuda Locket, and once again, it is Symmetrical Seraphim. I'm about sick of seeing Seraphim. I don't know why everyone is playing it, but all things being equal is a good thing when you're going for a strict test of player skill, so I don't necessarily mind the symmetricality of it. So Tamamo is on the south side, Ajax is on the north, and Bermuda Locket should be very familiar to all of you because it is a hellhole of overabundant reclaim. Basically, the contest is who can build more power generators because you have near infinite amounts of mass. You might say, oh, but those are puny little rocks. But oh ho ho, 147, 150, 150, 75. There is thousands upon thousands of reclaim, upwards of 40k available to you on this map. And the person who can utilize it more effectively will typically go on to be the winner. So Ajax is laying in power generators like a madman, going into a second air factory, which will probably go into drops to try and secure one side or the other on the southern edge. Tamamo is going for roughly the same build. 9 P-gens before the air factory, which is pretty typical for a transport build. Not even a need to build mass extractors. Come on, who needs those things when you can sustain yourself with the fruits of the land? It's a real thing, guys. So we'll see who is able to do a better job of snagging their expansions. Typically, as you go through the game, the center water becomes important. You'll see a frigate battle in here, which might actually not happen since everyone has floaty artillery. Everyone might just ignore it. And then you do need air control because it's a big map. A big freaking map. So the quicker you can move around, the more intel you can gather, the more quickly you can raid your opponent's things, the better off you are. So lots of assistance here on the air factory. That is going to be an ungodly amount of T1 power before it's actually built. That's 5, 9, 10, 11, 12, which is 3 more than you would typically need. But again, consider the fact that you need that power due to the amount of reclaim that you have, and it will all make sense to you. So lots of building there. Air factory going down in a very fast way. And then we'll see what his first unit out is before we go zoom back in on Tamamo to check his progress. That is going to complete, and there's the transport first off. Building as quickly as it can possibly go. Faster transport from Petrick. He probably got into a tiny bit of a power stall, but that is okay because he was the faster of the two, and now he's going to roll into an absurd amount of power generator building with his ACU assisted by one of his engineers. You're also going to need lots of land factories in this game because you got to have NGs to get out and get the reclaim. You got to have combat forces to protect your hold on the lockets. So hopefully both of these players are in for the long haul because this is a difficult APM intensive map to play. We've got a second air factory coming online with an identical amount of power, so that's actually where that extra 4 P-gens goes. He's able to rip out the transport at an absurd pace, and then he has enough power to run 2 air factories straight up. That is actually a cool little build trick. I might have to use that as one of my build orders at some point. Methinks this is a good thing. Immediate land factory going down from Ajax's engineers. You want to have that base of production in order to make the point more resilient because it is much harder to shut down an operation with a land factory backing it than it is to shut down something that only has 2 engineers and a single anti-air turret. That is a recipe for failure. Ajax is dropping 4 additional land factories at the head of the locket, and Ajax is doing much the same thing over on his side, although it looks like he's planning 3 in the more protected position with 1 at the forward edge. A little bit of an odd distribution there. Nope, it's 3 and 3. Okay, that makes a lot more sense now. We've got a T1 bomber headed out to the other side that is going to try to snag these engineers. I think they are too widely placed to be killed with 1 bomb, but 2 should do just fine as long as the micro doesn't carry it out of harm's way. And then we've also got manual reclaim with lots of mexes being claimed over on that side. That is going to be a drop into this group of 4 mass extractors. Very interesting use of the transport. Typically that's something that's so close that you would think, no, you don't need a transport. We'll just walk an engineer over there. But every second that you gain means that your mexes are paying for themselves that much quicker, and that economic boost comes into play sooner. So I heartily approve of this method. If you got the transport port, you might as well abuse it. It's going to be a total of 5 naval factories versus 2 in the initial planning. Again, The naval factories are not going to be as critical in the early game, considering the fact that everybody here has access to mobile artillery, but towards the later portion of the game, being able to use the frigates to shut down potential avenues of access and potentially force your opponent out of the water is definitely something that you should be glad to have. Ajax is still building power. Petrick a little bit ahead on score, mostly I think due to the fact that he has got more of his expansions taken. He's got more mass extractors built straight up. Equal level of expansion over to the right-hand edge. Ajax is building 5 land factories over here. Probably at least 1 to strictly build engineers for the reclaim, and then 4 more for units to deny this. It's kind of fun, but you to execute if you can build T2 or a sufficient number of T1. You can actually flood these, because usually the thought process goes, oh, this is a narrow choke point and there's not much valuable over here, so my opponent is not going to build that much T1 land. And it's true, it is a choke point and it can be easily defended with the ACU, but I cannot tell you the number of times that I have made that incorrect estimation and been wiped out by an opposing land force that I simply did not see coming. And once you are behind in the build, it is very difficult to come back from that. So you do need to be scaling your land production from early on in the game, strictly to deny raiding and base denial potential. Let's see, we've got tanks and engineers loading up here for Petrick, and that is going to drop out to the neck here. A little bit of defensive positioning to protect that engineer, as well as claiming another 4 mass extractors. And with that, he is actually going to control more than half of the map, interestingly enough. So this frigate was going in for the kill on the engineers here. Thankfully, there was a naval factory in between, so that frigate is going to be entirely useless and somewhat neglected due to Ajax misplaced APM, I guess would be the better way to go with it. We've got a tier 1 sub and a tier 1 frigate coming out again. This factory has not been turned on, and that is going to be an ejected frigate. Oh, dearie, dearie me. Look at this drop over here. And we've got one over here as well. My goodness. Petrick is going all out for all 4 corners here. But these tanks are going to be an excellent denial tool for this expansion. That is going to slow down Petrick in a big way, because he is now going to have to deal with 8 T1 tanks in his base, shutting down his means of production, and that is not an easy thing to deal with. If you do get your ACU over there, the tanks can run circles around it, and if you don't put your ACU over there, it's going to take 9 to 10 tanks to deny, which is kind of a big deal. We've got more units coming as well, totally skipping the pass here that's defended by point defense and multiple units, and choosing instead to drop directly into the expansion. Very, very weird indeed. So we've got no more units left there. All of those were knocked out. Well done on that. And Petrick is going to be taking some hits here. He's starting to produce some tier 1, which is going to trickle into this side. And we've got more tier 1 factories being built in the base, but these really need a tier 1 point defense to protect them. Oh, loading the drop back up and dropping directly in. Oh dear. Oh dear indeed. This is going to hurt. Petrick's going to be able to reclaim this with his ACU very quickly. And this transport may get shot down. Yes. Good deal there. So at least something denied. But holy hell, that was a lot there in the middle of the base. I was not expecting that series of drops to be as effective as it eventually was. Up here on the front, Ajax is facing off versus the opposing units in the neck here. That is going to allow him to reclaim most of this territory. And we now have 4 naval factories with 1 assisted for a 50% boost up on the north side versus 5 with another 50% boost. That's effectively one extra naval factory running for Petrick. Although there is another naval factory happening over on the left-hand side away from where Petrick has scouted. So that might be a little bit of a punch to the side of the head once those units start coming through. Over here on the right, Ajax is going to make some progress. He's going to push these guys back. That's going to deny these mass extractors and the reclaim in the choke, and also give him a method to attack some of these expansions over on the right. Now, that was not claimed before. I'm not sure why it wasn't built. But Ajax has got full control of his entire segment over here, and is also making a little bit of progress through the neck, and also was able to wipe this out. It is mind-boggling sometimes when you watch the higher rated players how many things they have going on at the same time. I would never be able to keep track of it. Never ever. But they managed to do it, and they managed to do it well. Tamamo is still ahead, 27k score. Let's go ahead and take a moment while we're isolated to one assault here in the neck and take a look at how the economies are going. That's going to be set to 0. Tamamo is running 89, 1940 with, let's call it 20k reclaim, because by the time we change, that'll be where it's at. We're at 20, 89, and 19 versus 16, 68 in a power stall, and 900. My goodness, Ajax is in a hell of a power stall. He is not doing particularly well, though he does have more mass income total. When you're 3,000 behind on reclaim and at substantially less power than your opponent is at, that is not a good sign. We do have tier 2 land over here though, and a tier 2 power generator that's been built, so hopefully things will start working out a little bit better for him in the future. Let's go ahead and tap back over to the regular viewport. And now we got everything in focus. As far as tier 2 goes, we don't have any tier 2 yet for Tamamo. He is strictly pushing, never mind, I lied. We've got a tier 2 HQ for land and air over on the right expansion. My goodness, I have screwed up royally. So tier 2 power is in place. We got a lot of production down, and that is going to give him some very interesting tools to work with. He has chosen to go for hover tanks, which are not as good as frigates, let's be real. But they do afford you the opportunity to cross into land and deal damage. So pairing these with hover artillery and with your navy is a very good thing indeed. Over here on the left, these Ilshavas are probably going to try to force their way through the neck, which is going to push Petrick either into tier 2 production on this side, which it looks like he's going for, or into blockading the gap with tier 2 point defense, which would eventually fall to mobile missile launchers. But for the time being, it looks like the tier 2 land is going to be the denial mechanism, and Petrick is going to continue pouring resources into this navy, namely into a tier 2 factory, which is something that Ajax is not doing. So once a destroyer drops out here, if it is able to, once a destroyer comes into play, that is going to wreak havoc on Ajax's naval propositions. And the bad thing about Seraphim destroyers is that in large part, they're not going to do anything versus land units. They're strictly going to be a tool for winning Navy. However, whichever person wins Navy is going to be able to build cruisers, which do horrendous amounts of interior damage. So cruisers are the name of the game if you can get to that point. Oh, dearie, dearie me. Look at this. Tamamo has got a tack launcher up, which is going to be able to shoot at most of the things on the right side of this expansion. That's going to be multiple tier 2 mass extractors going down. He's also going to snipe off naval factories with this tack launcher. Excellent investment of those tacks, let me tell you. The naval factories, he was probably assuming that this was going for a tier 2 upgrade. It was not, but still a good pick. But naval factories cost more than land factories. So if you're able to hit them, oh, that is a naval fight. And it is going to be in favor of Petrick. With a tier 2 naval factory in the water, Ajax was making a play for naval superiority while he had the opportunity, while there was that downtime with mass being invested into the HQ instead of into more Navy, but he failed at it. And now there's a torpedo bomber for his troubles. Hover tanks dropping in on the other edge. That is going to eliminate the Tier 1 mass extractors with extreme prejudice. And those will move on to raid the base, I'm sure of it. We've also got a broken neck over on the right-hand edge where Petrick has been able to punch through towards the core production on Ajax's side. Couple that with the loss of the naval factory there, and this is not looking good for Ajax at all. That TAC launcher is going to continue with repeated hits to this side. We've got Ilshiva's moving in versus the artillery. GG thrown out by Ajax, congratulating Petrick on the win, and he is going to bail. I do not blame him in the slightest for that, because Petrick played incredibly strongly, and Ajax just did not have the staying power. I feel for him because he's tired at this point. This tournament has been going on for 6.5 hours. That is a long time to play. It is mentally grueling. But congratulations are in order to Petrick. Smith, yes, you can absolutely say that you called it now, man. Appreciate the bits. All right, that is it. That is the Legend of the Stars tournament. And Tamamo, otherwise known as Petrick, is going to walk away with a $500 first prize. Ajax walking away with second. And then Iseki Shan, otherwise known as Farms, in third place, with smaller prizes to go with those placements. Well done to everyone who played in this tournament. I had a fantastic time casting it. We got some excellent games. The best players in the community came forward, and they really delivered in a big way for this tourney, and I'm glad that we had it. Again, thank you to all the tourney directors, Eggroll, Moonbear, a couple of others that got involved. I feel bad for leaving anyone out who participated, but just know that if you helped with these, it was a huge deal. And then, of course, massive thank you to Legend of the Stars himself, who donates the money to make this tournament happen on a yearly basis. So, huge thank you to him as well. All right, that is going to wrap it up for me. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. That is going to wrap everything up for this video, guys. If you enjoyed it, feel free to drop a like and share it with someone. If you want to support the channel, catch the streams, or join the Discord, check out the links in the description. Thank you all for being at least partially insane, and I will see you in the next one.